Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Movies You Missed podcast. This is episode 42. How's it going, V?
I am great and floating on air after watching those two lighthearted movies that we watched for this episode this week. How are you doing today, John?
Pretty good. The lightest of hearts, indeed. Very Cloud9 type movies. Very uplifting movies. Very feel-good-ish type movies as well. I'm looking forward to getting into discussing both of them because I had not seen your pick, but I had seen mine many, many times, and I was very excited to introduce you to it this week.
Yes, because I had not seen yours.
Indeed. It's been happening a lot.
I love it.
That's cool. That's what we're here for.
Exactly.
I can only imagine how many movies we are introducing people to, because we do have a lot of people that comment like, I love that one, I love this one. Not often are we seeing, I hadn't seen that one, but every now and then we do. And I'm curious, especially with my pick this week, because I know majority of people that I've always brought it up to have never even heard of it.
Yes.
So I'm curious if our audience has even heard of it or seen it before today.
Yes, me too. And I agree with you. I really love hearing people say, oh man, I've added this to my movie list. I haven't seen it before. That's one of my favorite things to hear. And then also hearing their follow-up on whether or not they liked it.
Exactly. So much fun. Do keep it coming. Comments, interactions, messages, tweets, all that stuff. We have so much fun with it.
Yes, we do. And before we get into our movie picks of the week, we always like to discuss any new movies that we've seen since our last episode. So, John, have you seen any movies this week?
I did not watch any new movies this week, although I would love to discuss some of the Oscar nominations that came out on the 24th of this month.
Ooh, yes, please.
There's definitely some good ones. I think this was a year that made me believe in movies again, and these Oscar nominations are also making me feel like the glitz and glam is truly back for the good movies.
Yes, this certainly blows the last couple of years of Oscars out of the water in terms of quality.
Absolutely. Yes, it does. Just about every category is actually stacked with at least 3 nominations that I can fully get behind. I don't feel like any of these nominees were bought nominees.
Ooh, I will vehemently disagree with you, actually.
Oh, really? Well, maybe with the Colin Farrell thing. I know you have a problem with that one.
No, not necessarily. It is a good movie, and I like that he was nominated this year, and even if it was not necessarily for the movie that I would have picked, I get it. I actually have a major issue with the Best Actress category this year.
Why is that?
Ana de Armas
I think I
should
why.
not have been nominated for Blonde. That movie is the worst movie I saw last year, to a point where I didn't even talk about it in our 2022 roundup because I'd blocked it from my memory because I was so pissed off about that movie. She should not have been nominated, and a lot of people are saying, oh, that was a bad movie, but she was really good in it.
She was really good, yeah.
No, she was not. She could not lose her accent to play a real-life person. That is a bad performance, period.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of hers. I loved her in the James Bond movie. I loved her in the Knives Out movie. I think she's great.
Oh, I had no idea she was in either of those.
But I absolutely, vehemently disagree with this nomination and am really upset that it took the place of someone like Viola Davis from Woman King.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like the two that I might have the biggest problem, I don't know what Andrea Riseborough to Leslie's performance is like.
Speaking of PR campaigns, the last couple of weeks, that's how she got that nomination.
Oh, wow.
Other than that, I do agree with you. I'm very happy with all of the movies that were nominated. I'm also happy with some of the movies that were not nominated, and you and I will agree with that, even though you haven't seen Babylon.
Yes, I do not have to see it now. There was neither a Best Picture or Best Director nomination for Babylon, and for those that know me through this podcast know that I will never watch another one of that man's movies.
Yes.
Unless I absolutely have to, and that's just how it goes.
One other category that I do believe there was a snub, the Batman did not get nominated for Best Score.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
That was a good score.
That was a very good score. One. However, I was pleasantly surprised to see all of the nominations for All Quiet on the Western Front, including Best Picture, even though it's a non-English movie.
Right? That's pretty sweet. That's another Parasite situation.
Exactly. So very encouraged by that. I hope it'll lead more people in the United States to watch it.
I definitely have to watch that one because it is nominated for Best Score as well. I also wanted to talk about how John Williams is nominated for The Fabelmans, which now makes him the most nominated composer at the Oscars alive, and he is 90 years old. He is the oldest nominee, and he and Steven Spielberg have worked together for 40-something years. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, absolutely insane. When I saw him at the Golden Globes as Spielberg was walking up to take the Golden Globe for Best Director, I was like, man, that's right. John Williams did the score for The Fabelmans. And it's a great score.
One of, if not the greatest movie composer of all time, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Beyond the snubs that we were a little disappointed about, definitely excited for Best Supporting Actor category. I think it's great that Ke-Huy Quan was nominated for an Oscar. I think it's great Brendan Gleeson was also nominated for an Oscar for Banshees of Inisherin. Judd Hirsch for The Fabelmans kind of threw me off. He was in the movie for maybe 8 minutes, and it wasn't a performance that, brought me to my knees in any way, shape, or form, but I guess, why not? Nominate Judd Hirsch, no big deal. And Barry Keoghan, if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, apologies. For Banshees of Inisherin, I thought he was pretty good in that movie. I thought he was far better in The Killing of a Sacred Deer, which is a twisted-ass movie. Was very excited to see Jamie Lee Curtis get nominated for Everything Everywhere All at Once. That was very, very surprising news for everybody, including Jamie Lee Curtis. Her Twitter was all nuts that day. It's very entertaining. And again, I think that's just great because it really was just a great year for movies last year. And the Best Picture nominees, I'm wondering if you agree with all of them. I mean, granted, I don't think you've seen all of them either, but the ones that I've seen that are nominated, I completely agree with. I mean, it's pretty obvious that Avatar: Way of Water was going to get a Best Picture nominee. It's James Cameron, and it's a technological breakthrough of a piece of cinema. But I don't think it's going to win Best Picture.
No. I do. I definitely need to watch a couple more as well. A lot of people are upset about Top Gun Maverick because, it's just this action film, but I would argue that action movies not only can be best pictures of the year, but the significance of bringing that many people back to theaters should not be ignored in terms of the noteworthiness of a movie.
Right. Yeah, I fully agree. I was very excited to see it get a Best Picture nominee. I don't think it'll win, but I think it's awesome that it's in there. Elvis, I think, is getting nominated mostly because it is a really cool way that the story was told, and it's a piece of music history of America. But I don't think Elvis will win Best Picture. It's really tough. It could be one of the really popular ones, or Women Talking could really swoop in and be the sleeper, like how Moonlight was.
How was Baz Luhrmann not nominated for a Best Director slot?
Yeah, that's true too. It's interesting. Again, I haven't seen Tar or Triangle of Sadness, so I'm not sure. But it's interesting. It really is.
Yeah. Well, I'm very glad we had a chance to talk about the Oscar nominations in this week's episode.
As am I. I love the Oscars. They are my favorite award show of the year. I always make sure that I am home for the Oscars. I love watching them, especially if I hate the host because I do nothing but drink and scream at the TV. And I can't wait for you to be here, Vee, so we can do it together.
Yes, absolutely.
Sweet. So with that, Vee, I believe you saw 1 or 2 or 3
I did.
Or 4?
2.
2.
I saw 2. And one of them is one I've been meaning to get around to for a very long time. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch it before our 2022 recap episode, but still very happy to have seen it. It was Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Oh, wonderful. And what did you think of Everything, Everywhere, All at Once?
It was a fascinating, creative story. I really enjoyed how they put the movie together. I think Ke-Huy Quan was phenomenal. I agree with everyone and all of the awards he's getting. I now see it and understand. I was a little less blown away by Michelle Yeoh, but that doesn't mean I don't think she deserves Oscar nominations or anything like that. In a movie full of fantastic performances, I think Ke-Huy Quan took the cake.
Oh, yeah, I'll give you that much. Absolutely. I can't wait to watch that one again and introduce that one to my wife.
Definitely, and I love Jamie Lee Curtis's character. She was great.
So awesome. So awesome.
What a coup.
And I still will be, so grateful that I had no idea she was in that movie until I sat my ass in the theater and she showed up on screen. So awesome. Just a nice surprise.
So I'm very glad I finally got around to watching it since it's been on my list for a long time and heard such great things from you. And if anybody's interested in watching it, it's now on Showtime streaming if you want to check it out.
Oh, sweet.
The other movie I watched, which is just one of the most ridiculous action movies I've seen in quite some time. It certainly jumped to a pretty good spot on my movies of 2022 list, and I'm so disappointed with myself that I didn't get around to watching it during the Christmas holiday season. This is Violent Night.
Oh, nice.
With David Harbour and John Leguizamo. Oh my God. That movie is
Leguizamo?
Awesome. Yes.
Hell yeah. I had no idea Leguizamo was in that. Damn, he's popping up all over the place.
He is. He is very busy lately.
I love it.
And Violent Night is Violent Night is if Die Hard, a heist movie, and Santa Claus had a baby together. That would be this movie.
Awesome.
And throw some Tarantino in there while you're at it because it was really, really gory.
Oh, was it really?
It's so violent.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Hence the title.
Yes. And so it's definitely a rated R movie. Don't have any kids watch it, but it was super fun. And it's absolutely now going to be on this year's Christmas movie list for the month of December for me. So
oh, sweet.
I'm going to introduce it to our audience too.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, and it's currently streaming on Peacock for anybody who wants to check it out.
I do want to check it out. I wanted to see it in theaters, but I saw other movies instead. So I look forward to seeing that one. I heard great things.
On days where you want to watch something that's fun, or on days where you're just kind of pissed and you want a little bit of catharsis with violence, throw that in because it's a good
all right. Sweet. Well, then I definitely will check that out.
Yeah, so those are the two movies I watched last week. And this week we're getting into a brand new theme for our podcast. So much so, my pick this week, and my mom was around, and she walked in and she said, "Oh, what movie is this?" And I said, "Oh, this is Marry Me, a rom-com that came out last year." And I said, "I'm watching it for my podcast." And she goes, "What? You're putting that kind of movie on your podcast?" I was like, No. This is a Guilty Pleasures episode this week.
Wow. That's funny.
But hey, at least she thinks that we have standards.
Yes. I guess that's true. Yeah. Because we'll get into it when we get into it.
Yes, so for our audience, we want to let you know that this week we are covering Guilty Pleasures rom-com. So these are our rom-com movies that we picked that are absolutely not classics. They are not When Harry Met Sally. They are not The Holiday. These are movies that you throw on when you're by yourself and want to pick me up, and you don't usually tell people that you're a fan of them.
No, you do not. And I don't think I will ever admit to being a fan of yours, but we'll get into it later.
Okay. Well, I hope you didn't despise it. And I go first this week, so without further ado, as I mentioned, my pick is the 2022 J-Lo Owen Wilson-led Marry Me.
Marry me, say yes, marry me. Oh, good God. Nope. I think J-Lo's gorgeous, but after that song, I will not marry you.
I didn't like that song, but all the other songs in the movie are great.
Ooh. Are they?
Yeah, I love this soundtrack. It's one of the reasons why I love the movie.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I really did not know anything about this movie except for the two people that were in it. My wife is a big J-Lo fan, and I think I've mentioned it before. She was very excited to see it. I said I would take her to see it, but my sister did instead, and I was quite grateful for that after having seen it at home. So,
oh, no.
No, again, guilty pleasures. Well, let's talk about it after you tell everybody what Marry Me is all about.
We'll talk about it. So judgy.
No, not at all.
Okay. So Marry Me, for anyone who hasn't seen it, is about a pop star played by J-Lo who is engaged to be married to this other musical star named Bastian, who is played wonderfully by Maluma, who is a real-life music star.
Oh, is that okay?
Yeah, he's great. My mother and I are fans of him.
Oh, wow.
These two beautiful, famous, very rich people are engaged to be married. And because they're both pop stars, what they're going to do is actually get married at one of their concerts. And all their fans are so excited. And social media plays a huge part in this movie, which I actually really liked because I haven't seen a ton of rom-coms where social media is really integrated into the story and it feels very fresh and very recent in terms of relevancy to our lives.
Sure.
They're all set to get married. It's that night. And all of a sudden, everybody's phones are blowing up backstage, and J-Lo's character named Kat Valdez grabs one of the phones from her manager and sees that online there's a video of her husband-to-be making out in the doorway of a hotel room with her assistant.
Oh,
so brutal. And the stage then starts raising her up and in this wedding dress that she's supposed to be getting married, and all of a sudden she's on stage with this blank face, not knowing what to do because she's supposed to be on stage marrying this guy who's just a cheating bastard, right?
Yeah.
She has a bit of a freak out moment here and picks a random guy out of the crowd that's holding a "Marry Me" sign. And it happens to be Owen Wilson, and she goes, "Yes, I'll marry you." And she brings him on stage and marries him instead because she's so pissed at her fiance. Now, I love this part where they're backstage and Bastien's trying to talk to her and like, no, it didn't happen, or I'm really sorry, or whatever. And he's like, you're freaking out, and you're crazy, you just go and marry some fan. And Owen Wilson's like, no, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I'd like that too.
And he's like, well, I am.
Well, maybe
now.
I will be, but yeah.
Because it turns out that just his friend, his coworker, had invited him to the show, and he just brought his daughter along, and she had handed him that sign in the middle of the concert. And so he didn't know what was going on either.
Yeah, and his friend is played by...
wonderfully by Sarah Silverman. I love that there's a gay best friend in this movie. I know it's such a trope, but it was so fun. It was great. She was really, really good. I think I liked the movie more because she was in it. Oh yeah, 100%.
But every time she showed up, I was like, all right, cool, what's going to happen now? There was a lot of fun watching Sarah Silverman in this movie.
And so what happens is that J-Lo's character, Kat Valdez, says, what the hell? Like, nothing's been working, and I don't want to make myself look like a total fool, so why don't I get to know this guy and see what happens? And the movie goes from there, which is really interesting and fun to watch. And I love this movie because, even though John might disagree with me, I love the music. The main song I'm not a huge fan of, but all of the rest of the music is great. J-Lo does, of course, all of her own singing, which is also fun to watch. And I think the two leads, Owen Wilson and Jennifer Lopez, had fantastic chemistry.
Yeah, I could see that. There was definitely, I don't know, and I don't want to say this was like a miscast movie at all. They definitely sold the idea, especially with it being Owen Wilson. But yeah, overall, I would say the chemistry between both of them was pretty good, and they seemed to have a lot of fun together on set. They sold each other's characters very well.
Yeah, and he is playing a math teacher, and I thought he was very believable in that role, and I also really liked how he could convey being perplexed and really dismayed by her lifestyle without coming across as super judgy.
Right, yeah, I did like that too. I liked that there was the aspect of, okay, well, this is the life that she leads. I'm going to try and I'm going to do what I can to really kind of sink my teeth into this to support her in any way that I can, which was so strange because they didn't know each other. It's a weird movie. It was weird. Like right when she gets up there and she's like, I'll marry you. I look at Amy, I was like, this is how this happens?
It's the ultimate meet cute. Shut up.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Jennifer Lopez, of course, is completely gorgeous and also ageless. She was...
Yeah. Oof.
And a little later, I'll get into exactly how ageless she was. But I thought she did a great job. I mean, she's not the greatest actor, of course, but it was still fun to watch her. And of course, being a pop star in the movie wasn't a huge stretch for her either, which helps.
Yeah, she's played Selena, and she is Jenny from the block. Don't be fooled by the rocks that she's got.
She's got a lot of them because, and this is another thing I like about this movie, it totally pokes fun at the real Jennifer Lopez. It talks about how many marriages she has. There's late night commentary about how many times she's been engaged and how many men she's been with. And it's exactly what has happened to the real life Jennifer Lopez. So I like that she could not take herself too seriously. and be in this movie.
I completely was down with all of that, especially when it was Jimmy Fallon. And then at one point when she shuts him down, my wife was like, oh, I'll bet you really like this movie now that they're shutting down Jimmy Fallon. I'm like, I actually am starting to like the movie a little bit more.
Exactly.
But you're right, though. Yeah, J-Lo definitely poking fun at herself is always fun to see because, again, you go back to that whole, all right, at least they don't take themselves too seriously. Mm-hmm. They know that the world knows this about them, so why fucking hide from it? Mm-hmm. And it was a bit refreshing to see J-Lo do something like that because I don't know how often you've heard this, but every now and then you hear that she can be a little bit intense to work with. Her writers are really heavy, stuff like that, and she expects certain things.
And there were some pretty clever lines in this movie I really liked when Bastian came up to the two of them after all of this happens. And they're on a red carpet, and Bastian goes to Owen Wilson. He's like, hey, man, no hard feelings. And Owen Wilson goes, no feelings at all. And I love that insult so much because it reminds me of Mad Men when Don Draper's in the elevator and this young guy comes in and he's like, I feel so sorry for you. And Don Draper goes, I don't think about you at all. And it was just the best burn. I love that insult.
I don't even remember
much.
That.
Oh, it's
That's
like
great.
One of my favorite insults of all time. It's like, yeah, I don't even think about you. So kind of reminded me of that in Marry Me, which was really fun. And another fun aspect is the Grammys are a bit of a plot point in this as well. And it reminded me how I actually worked at the Grammys. One of my jobs in Hollywood was doing lighting and electric when I was first starting out. And so I did all the lighting and electric for the Grammys. And that was a really fun gig that I did. And just reminded me of that when I first saw this movie last year, which was great.
Mm-hmm. I had no idea that you did that.
Yeah, it was one of my earlier jobs in the industry, and it was really cool because it was at the Staples Center, which is the same place that the Lakers play, that the LA Kings hockey team plays, and it was great to be able to see the locker rooms and just walk on the floor where all of these professional sports teams play. And of course, that's where a lot of concerts are too. It's used for many things in Los Angeles, actually.
Yes, it most certainly is. I've seen many concerts there, many basketball games. Now there's the Nokia Live across the street, which is another great venue. I've seen a couple of shows there. So yeah. Staples Center is pretty sweet. That's pretty cool. I would actually like to see the inner workings of the Staples Center. I've been on the court once or twice.
It's massive.
But I haven't been like, it's insane
gosh.
standing in the middle of that thing and looking around.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you definitely feel small. It's like that meme where, it's like, this is you. And it's like the vastness of the galaxy. It's kind of what it feels like
exactly
when you're standing in the middle of the Staples Center.
That's so true. And I also liked a little bit of the commentary that J-Lo had in this movie. She talked a lot about how women are treated in the music industry and how they're really shamed for having a lot of boyfriends or a lot of husbands and men aren't, and the credibility behind that, which I really appreciated. And for someone who has worked in the industry, I really liked this conversation that her and Owen Wilson's character had. He asked, is it crazy that everybody in the world knows you? And she responded with, what's crazy is that they think they know me.
Yeah,
and
I remember that.
I think that applies almost universally to famous people.
Mm-hmm.
All of their fans think they know them, but in reality, they only know a very small part of their persona. And you and I can attest to all of these actors who have fans all over the world, and it's just their red carpet or social media or interviews that they know of them. And they're actually real people who are very complex a lot of times. And people just think they know them because they see them on TV.
I know, it's pretty nuts. I believe I might have been guilty of that every now and then, thinking, since I follow somebody and they post this, that, and the other, it's like, oh, that's what they're into, and But then every now and then, I've had the pleasure of working with that person and finding out that they're kind of who they seem to put out on social media. So maybe J-Lo is kind of like her character. She puts a lot on her social media. It's kind of like endorsements too. You see, them doing their endorsements and stuff like that online, and you think, oh, they're doing this because they want to, and it's not always the case.
No, and what we all know now is social media is completely curated, and it's the best of the best, and even regular people only put the good things out on social media. And when all of these actors or famous people are getting interviewed, they're on their best behavior, and we don't ever see them crying or angry because that's not what they want to put out there, right? And so that's what I mean by
very true.
Fans or people who just don't know them as other people really don't know what kind of personalities they have.
Nope.
I thought that was a really great comment.
I like that too.
Another reason why I like this film is because of the cast. Really fun supporting cast in this movie.
Big time.
As we mentioned, Jennifer Lopez is the star. She plays Kat Valdez. I first saw her in the 90s as Selena, which she did a great job.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, she wasn't singing in Selena, but she does sing in this movie, which I really enjoyed seeing.
Is that right?
Yeah,
I thought she sang in Selena.
I thought for the longest time she did too, and several years ago I found out it wasn't the case.
Huh.
She was also in a George Clooney movie called Out of Sight, made by Steven Soderbergh, which most people would say is her best movie.
Such a bitchin' flick.
However, I would argue that The Cell is her best movie.
Ah, yeah, The Cell is awesome.
Was one of my picks early on in our podcast, and I had forgotten that I had already picked a J-Lo movie when I picked this guilty pleasure. But that's okay.
Yeah, that is.
She's also in...
That one's not a guilty pleasure.
No, not at all. That one's just amazing. She's also in a movie called Enough, which is a badass movie about a domestic violence survivor taking back her power.
I did see that one. That was good.
She was also in Made in Manhattan with Ray Fiennes.
Oh, yes.
Rom-com.
There is only one moment in that movie that I remember that makes me laugh so hard. It's when the blonde woman is like having her freak out in the hotel room with J-Lo.
Oh, yeah.
I think that whole sequence is hysterical. Other than that, that movie is 100% forgettable in every way, shape, or form.
Agreed. Another movie that is supposedly very, very good, though, is a movie that came out recently called Hustlers.
Oh, Hustlers is... yeah. The movie itself is very fascinating. I did not know that that was based on a true story when I actually saw the movie for the first time.
Yeah, I haven't gotten around to seeing it yet, but I heard it's very, very good.
Oh, my wife liked it. Again, my wife's a J-Lo fan. I think it's the only time my wife would ever watch a movie about strippers.
Yeah, probably. And, of course, we cannot forget the masterpiece.
Oh.
Anaconda.
Anaconda, yeah. I knew it was coming. So
terrible.
Horribly awesome.
I was thinking
and
about
Owen
that.
Wilson's in that one.
That's why I saved it for last, because Owen Wilson is her co-star in Anaconda.
That's hilarious.
And 25 years later, they have reunited for this movie.
That is great. I wonder what those conversations were like. Hey, J-Lo, remember in Anaconda when we were in there? That's my Owen Wilson.
That's pretty bad.
Imitation.
It's not bad.
It's bad. No, it's pretty bad.
I meant that. What I was trying to say is that's pretty good, and that's not bad.
That's bad, not bad good.
That's pretty bad.
Wow.
Yes. So. Yes, Owen Wilson and Jennifer Lopez have been reunited, and some other movies that Owen Wilson has been in other than Anaconda, because his career did continue after that, thankfully. Wedding Crashers, one of my favorites of his.
Oh, yes. Great film.
More recently, he was in the Marvel show Loki, playing Mobius.
Really? I haven't seen Loki yet.
Oh, okay. He, of course, is Lightning McQueen in the Cars movies.
Yeah, I like the Cars movies. I know you have a problem with 2 and 3, or if 2 didn't see 3.
Mm-hmm.
I just, every time I watch it, it's still like, oh yeah, it's Owen Wilson. There's not enough excitement in his voice, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like, Lightning McQueen is a badass racer, and, it's like, speed. Wow, speed. Yeah. Owen Wilson is a car. It's just fucking weird. It's not, give me a little bit of a more rustic voice. I don't know who, maybe even fucking Ben Stiller, who can do like a little bit of like a, ooh, yeah, speed. I don't know, something different. And that was the one thing I think that bothered me also about Cars, was that nobody's voices were any different. They all just sounded like them. And I guess that's fine, but give me a little bit of something. I don't know. I still like the Cars movies, though. Nothing against the Cars movies.
And speaking of Ben Stiller, Owen Wilson, of course, is in Zoolander.
As Hansel. So hot right now.
He is also in Marley and Me, a fantastic dog movie. If you ever want to sob uncontrollably, go ahead and watch that movie.
Yeah, I remember one time only.
He is, which I love these movies. I know they're terrible, but the Shanghai Noon movies with Jackie Chan are so fun.
Yes. Hell yeah. Shanghai Nights, number 2, is awesome. They're both great. Yeah, Shanghai Noon and Shanghai Nights. I saw them both in theaters. It's funny. I forgot about those movies.
Right?
Now I got to see. Actually, you know what?
Go watch
Every
them.
time when I was working at the bar last summer and people would come up for another beer, I would always go Uno Mosh, like Jackie Chan in Shanghai Nights. Or I think it was Shanghai Nights because they were in the was it the first one? They're in the bathtubs, and they're playing the game and they're taking shots. And then it comes in, he's got the bubble on, so I'm like Uno Mosh because he's finally learned a little bit of Spanish. That shit cracked me up.
And if you want to see a very young Lucy Liu, go ahead and watch Shanghai Noon. Remember, she's
if you want to see Lucy Liu at all.
Go ahead and watch Shanghai Noon. And lastly, he's in just about every single Wes Anderson movie because he and Wes Anderson are besties.
Boo.
I know, neither of us are Wes Anderson fans. Sorry.
I haven't seen Bottle Rocket. I hear that one is the best one, but I haven't brought myself to it. No.
I heard the Grand Budapest Hotel is the best one.
That's what a lot of people say too. I haven't finished that one. It is one that I told Amy I would watch with her again. That's one of the few DVDs that she owns, and she really likes that movie a lot.
Oh, okay.
And it's got Voldemort in that one too. Ray Fiennes is in that one.
Ray Fiennes is great. Maluma, as I mentioned, is Kat Valdez's original love interest in this movie. He is her fiancé as the movie starts. Maluma is much better known as a music star in reality. And this was his live-action movie debut, but he played Mariano in Encanto, the very cute young man in town who is pursuing her very beautiful sister.
Oh, that's awesome.
John Bradley does a great job being her sweet, trustworthy manager. He is...
Oh, he's great.
So good in this movie, and is recognizable from Game of Thrones, playing Samwell Tarly, John's really good friend, basically the Samwise Gamgee character in the Game of Thrones. I always say like,
pretty
oh my god,
much,
his name's Sam too. This is the same character from Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones.
I'd never put that together. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's great.
Sarah Silverman, as we talked about, is the gay best friend in this movie. She's so good. She is so witty, and if you close your eyes, you can absolutely hear Vanellope from Wreck-It Ralph movies. That's where I love her from.
I like how, interestingly enough, it's Sarah Silverman, but she did some twang to her voice to be Vanellope.
Mm-hmm, she did.
I liked that. Yeah, she was good Vanellope.
Lastly, the actress who I want to talk about is Michelle Buteau, who is a comedian. She's hilarious. She plays Kat's assistant who doesn't cheat on her.
Yeah.
She's a really funny comedian in real life. I really liked her in this movie. And she also is an assistant in another rom-com that I love, Always Be My Maybe. And so she's going to pop up again in February for one of my picks when we discuss that movie. So I'm excited to do that.
Very cool.
The cool thing is that even though this is a guilty pleasure, this movie was actually pretty popular last year.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, when it premiered on Valentine's Day weekend in 2022, it was the #1 movie in theaters and on streaming at the same time.
Oh, cool.
Very cool. It became the most streamed day-and-date film on Peacock ever, and day-and-date means it premiered in theaters and on streaming at the same time. So that's what day-and-date term means for people.
Very cool. I did not know that.
Yeah, and so it was on Peacock first. That's actually where I saw it. I did not see this in theaters. It is the #1 film on Peacock ever. And in June of 2022, it moved over to Amazon Prime, and it was the #1 streaming film for 2 weeks on that platform. So it was actually really popular.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like it. Awesome.
But because it did a double premiere in theaters and on streaming, it didn't make a ton in the box office, which totally makes sense because it was on streaming, right? That's how I watched it.
Sure, yeah.
And so it had a budget of $23 million. It made...
That's it?
Yeah, I know. Can you believe that?
So did 20 million of it go to J-Lo and the rest of it was for everything else?
I don't know. I would think that Owen Wilson commands more of a paycheck for movies than J-Lo, though. But I don't know.
What? I don't think so. Really? I would think J-Lo would have gotten paid far more than Owen Wilson.
Owen Wilson.
I'm going to guess J-Lo got at least $12 million for this movie.
But in the U.S., it made $22 million in the box office. So not great. For the worldwide total gross, though, it made $50 million. So it wasn't a flop, I'm wondering how much licensing fees Amazon Prime and Peacock has paid Universal for this movie, because depending on that, I think it could be considered a success for the production company. But as we know, streaming is a bit of a gray area still in terms of who makes the money and how, so not really sure there. But it is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, and like I said, it was the #1 film on streaming for quite a bit. So a lot of people did watch this movie.
That's fascinating. While you were giving us those stats, I did look up to see what each were paid, because I had
Thank
to
you.
know.
Yes.
Yeah. How much do you think J-Lo got paid on a $23 million budget for this movie?
$7 million.
Almost. You were off by $1.5 million. J-Lo was paid $8.5 million for Marry Me.
Wow, okay. And Owen Wilson?
How much do you think?
10.
13. No, I'm kidding. Owen Wilson was paid $2.5 million.
Nuh-uh.
$2.5 million, $8.5 million for J-Lo,
God.
2.5 for Owen Wilson.
I stand corrected. Nicely done.
Yes. His salaries apparently range from $1 million to $15 million.
Well, that makes sense, too, because not only is she in the movie a little bit more, but she sings all of the songs for the soundtrack. She did more work on the movie, so
right.
It does make sense.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't think it would
definitely
be that big of a discrepancy. Wow.
It makes sense to me. I mean, it's Jennifer Lopez. I would imagine her getting paid far more than Owen Wilson for this movie. Anybody, really.
You're right.
J-Lo's #1.
You're right. And Kat's wedding dress in the movie was designed by Zuhair Murad, and it was personally chosen by Jennifer Lopez after spotting it on the runway, which is really cool. The dress weighed 95 pounds.
What?
Mm-hmm.
That big one that she wears in the beginning of the movie?
Yeah, at the concert.
95 pounds? That's nuts.
Yeah, she sustained a hip injury from wearing it during all the long shoots, because she was probably in that wedding dress for like 10 hours.
Probably. That's insane.
Yeah. At the beginning of the conversation about this movie, I mentioned that Jennifer Lopez is ageless. I mean that literally, because her fiancé in the movie, Maluma, is 25 years younger than her in real life.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I didn't even notice the age difference. I looked at them, I was like, yeah, that is a beautiful couple. Totally makes sense they're together.
Yeah.
I did not
That's
even
crazy.
think about the fact that she's so much older than him.
Not at all. Nope.
She's literally double his age when this movie was made. Yeah.
Damn.
And like many movies that have either been produced recently or come out recently, COVID did affect the production of this movie. It was actually filmed in 2019.
Oh.
It was supposed to come out in 2021, but then was pushed, and finally came out in February of 2022, as I mentioned, which is why this has so many scenes of large crowds. There's a school involved because he's a teacher, and I didn't even think about it. I was like, oh, okay, so this is post-early pandemic where they're just doing COVID protocols and everybody's vaccinated on set or something, and in reality, it was like, oh, no, this was pre-COVID, which is why it looks so normal. And lastly, what I'll say about this film is the song On My Way, which is my favorite song of the whole soundtrack, won an MTV Movie Award for Best Song last year.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I think I remember that one. Is that like the last ballad that she sings?
Yeah, during that montage.
Okay. I figured J-Lo did all of her own singing. However, sometimes in the movie it looked like it was an absolute lip-syncing moment, but that doesn't mean she wasn't lip-syncing to herself.
Yes,
so
exactly.
there were a couple moments I was like, why not just... But it is what it is.
And that's the thing about movies that have musical numbers in them. Sometimes it's live singing. I think Moulin Rouge is a good example. And then other times it has to be dubbed over. Other times they're just lip syncing to a recording straight up. It just really depends on the set and what's happening in the movie to dictate that.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's Marry Me. So I'm now, I guess, anxiously waiting to hear your take on the movie.
It was okay. It was definitely not one for me that I would watch often. I don't know if I'd put it in a guilty pleasure of mine. I think it would be in the it's fine area for me. If my wife wanted to watch it, I wouldn't necessarily leave the room, but it's not one that I'm going to put on my own, I don't think. And I am a big J-Lo fan. I think Wedding Planner is a great movie. It's got McConaughey in it. There was a movie that I saw her in recently called Second Act that was pretty entertaining. My wife and I watched that one. So overall, though, I mean, I'm not a big Owen Wilson fan either, but overall, I'd give the movie like a C+.
Okay. Okay, well, it's a guilty pleasure episode. If you tell me that you won't walk out of the room if this movie's playing, I think it's done its job, and I haven't failed completely, right?
No, not at all.
As long as you didn't loathe this movie, we're fine. It's a guilty pleasure episode.
Definitely no loathing. Okay. No loathing at all.
Good.
Yeah. But again, C+ for me.
Okay. And how would you rank these compared to the other rom-coms that came out last year that we talked about last week, which is Ticket to Paradise and The Lost City?
I think The Lost City is the better of the three.
But I do think this movie is better than Ticket to Paradise.
Yes, I will say Lost City,
Sweet.
Marry Me, and Ticket to Paradise would be the order of films. If ever I were to watch all three of these movies again, it would be in that order.
Great. Okay. Well, with that, I'm happy to pass the popcorn over to you for your guilty pleasure rom-com movie of the week.
All right. And mine is a guilty pleasure. I saw this movie
you have
opening weekend, I believe.
No leg to stand on when it comes to criticizing my film.
Hey, mine's better than yours.
No! We'll let our audience decide.
Yes, we will. I saw this movie in theaters with a friend of mine, my friend Carly. I mentioned before the reason why I saw this was because Will Arnett was playing an Italian in this movie, and I thought that was hilarious. And other than that, there were a couple other things in the trailer that definitely drew me to wanting to see this movie. And I'm glad I did, because it made me laugh from beginning to end, and it still does. It came out in 2010. It stars Kristen Bell, Josh Duhamel, Angelica Houston, Danny DeVito, Will Arnett, John Heder, Dax Shepard. This is When in Rome, everybody. Welcome to Rome. And I love this movie. Again, it makes me laugh. I think it's very sweet. I think it's a very simple story that is done pretty well. There's definitely some problems throughout the movie. It's not an A+ movie by any means, shape, or form. I just think it's very easy watching, and I think it's very easy laughing. And that's what I enjoyed most about it. And before we get too deep into why I like it so much, I'll just give you a brief rundown of When in Rome, because I'm going to just take a shot in the dark that nobody has seen this movie already. So When in Rome is set in present day, 2010. It's about Beth, played by Kristen Bell. She is a young, up-and-coming curator at the Guggenheim in Manhattan, New York. She is a killer curator, but, there's always the problems with the head honcho at the office, and she's got a little bit of stress coming about because she's trying to put together a final exhibit to impress her head honcho manager, played by Angelica Houston. She plays a character named Celeste, and I thought she played that character very well, almost Morticia-like, but with a little bit more venom in her speech, which I thought was kind of fun. Still looks great. I mean, I don't know how old she was when making this movie. This movie's already 13 years old, but Angelica Houston did look pretty great in this movie.
She reminded me a lot of the stepmother in Ever After in terms of the condescending that she had.
Ah, yes. Yeah. I like that. I'll go with that. So as she's getting all of this situated at her job, Beth finds out that her younger sister is getting married to a man that she met 2 weeks ago on a plane. He's Italian, and she's head over heels in love, and she's got to have her older sister be the maid of honor at this wedding in Italy. So, of course, the work problem comes into play. Celeste is not really okay with Beth leaving town for 48 hours because these final art pieces are not yet locked in for the exhibit that they're about to put on in the next couple of days. And Beth's like, I'll take care of it. Don't you worry about it. It's not going to distract me. She's my baby sister. I got to go to the wedding. So she goes to the wedding, and everything kind of starts going wrong for her. She is doing what she can to be supportive of her sister. There's an omen that the maid of honor has to smash a vase, and however many pieces that the vase breaks into is how many years of happiness the maid of honor wishes upon the bride and the groom. And of course, she can't break this vase. And I think this scene's in the trailer. I actually can't remember, but it's a great scene, especially when she gets excited that she cracked the vase, because she can't break the damn thing, and she's having a lot of trouble. And this is when Josh Duhamel comes in and kind of becomes the savior of the day, and also becomes, the new love interest in Beth's life. So amongst all of this going on, after she meets Nick, who is played by Josh Duhamel, she's starting to figure maybe this guy is something that she could kind of maybe see a relationship, giving him a shot. She's very unlucky in love. It's a very going back to the word formulaic, this movie definitely has that formula of, the young, successful woman loving her job too much to find love situation kind of going down with Beth here. So after she meets Nick, she decides that she's going to give it a shot while she's out there because obviously he lives in the United States too, and maybe they might be able to have something go down with each other. But one thing leads to another, and Beth sees Nick making out with another woman. And then, of course, she gets mad, and she goes into the Fountain of Love, which is the Fontana d'Amore in Italy, in Rome, and she starts to pick up some coins in the fountain. And as she's doing this, we are introduced to several different characters, and we find out the legend of the Fontana d'Amore is if you take coins out of the fountain, then whomever the person that flipped that coin into the fountain would fall in love with you because you now hold that coin. So as she's picking up these coins, we meet Danny DeVito's character, we meet Dax Shepard's character, we meet John Heater's character, and Will Arnett's character. And this is when the comedy becomes even more insane and hilarious. And it's a very simple story, but at the same time, I don't think I've seen it done this way before, where all of a sudden there's all these guys chasing after this one woman because she has something of theirs. It's another reason why I think this movie works, is because it is a different story on top of a very familiar story. So Beth goes back to the United States, and she's working on this exhibit, and all of a sudden all of these guys just kind of start showing up. One's a street magician played by John Heater. Pretty fucking funny. Very Napoleon Dynamite, but Chris Angel-ish. Pretty entertaining stuff. Will Arnett is an Italian artist. He's a painter, and he's trying to paint the perfect portrait of Beth to show his love for her. Dax Shepard is a gale force wind male model, and his name is Gale, and he says like a gale force wind because it's the most powerful force on Earth. I just think that that's fucking hilarious. And his deadpan character I really liked. I've never worked with Dax Shepard. I've met him a few times. And I know that from what I've experienced with Dax Shepard, there's not a whole lot of a difference between who I've met and who Dax Shepard is playing on screen in this movie.
Is he full of himself?
No, that's not what I mean. No, okay. I just mean like he's got that dry kind of sense of humor. He's definitely always got a smile on his face. No, he's not standing there flexing or doing anything like that. No, he's just an entertaining guy.
He is.
That's what I mean.
First of all, he is deceptively fit, and I've always thought this. You look at Dax Shepard when he's on the red carpet or posting pictures on Instagram, and you're like, okay, he's just this goofy looking skinny guy, and then when he takes his shirt off, you're like, holy shit, he's so fit. And I've always loved him and Kristen Bell working in a movie together, because for our audience, they're married in real life, and
yes.
They're back and forth in this movie, and the back and forth she has with all of the other suitors in this movie is hysterical. I laughed so many times in this film. And
good.
And another movie that they're in together that's really funny is the remake of Chips that Dax Shepard actually directed.
I never saw Chips.
Oh, Michael Peña's in it too, which is cool. But
I remember,
he plays this washed-up motocross star living in like the pool house or the guest house of his really nice mansion, and his wife Kristen Bell lives in the house and keeps cheating on him and is like so awful to him. And it's just hilarious because they're married in real life.
That is pretty funny. They actually ended up getting married after making this movie together. They started dating during the production of this movie.
I was wondering what that timeline was. That's so cute.
Yeah, I know. I thought that was kind of cool.
It's a real-life rom-com.
Exactly, yeah. Will Arnett plays Antonio. Mentioned before, he's an Italian street artist. He's got long curly hair, and he's always calling her Principessa and chasing her through New York City because all he's been doing is painting Beth ever since she grabbed the coin that he flipped into the Fontana d'Amore. And Danny DeVito plays a businessman named Al, who he just wants to get all the loving that he can from Beth. I just think that it's so funny that all of these guys are going after her. In the midst of all of this, Nick, who we met earlier, Josh Duhamel, is now actually trying to get at Beth, and not in any way, shape, or form like these other guys are, like an actual suitor. You know, he's trying to ask her out, and he's trying to take her out to dinner or a drink. And Joan, who is played by Alexis Ziena. She's a character actress. She plays her younger sister. She was in Entourage. She was also in Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. And she's been giving Nick Beth's phone number and work address and all this other stuff because Joan really wants Beth to find love, just like her father and her mother and all her friends and assistant who is played by another character actress named Kate Micucci. She is one of two young ladies that are in this little folk comedy band called Garfunkel and Oates. She's been in so many things. She most recently has been doing some of the voices on the newer DuckTales animated series, but she was on several episodes of The Big Bang Theory and many commercials before she started acting more full-time in feature films and television. So this film definitely has a lot of people that are recognizable. I believe Kristen Schaal is also in this movie, and I think Kristen Schaal is hilarious. She is one of the voices on Bob's Burgers, and she's been in a whole bunch of different comedies throughout the last maybe 15, 20 years. And another actor who is in this movie, when we were talking about Owen Wilson, since Owen Wilson's in Wedding Crashers, Keir O'Donnell is the priest in this movie, and he is in Wedding Crashers, and he plays Todd Cleary, who is Claire Cleary's brother, the weird, reclusive son of Christopher Walken's character. Yes. And I really liked him in Wedding Crashers, especially the unrated version of Wedding Crashers. There's more of him in that. If you haven't seen the unrated version of Wedding Crashers, do that.
And you can't forget a young Lee Pace at the beginning of this film, who is her ex-boyfriend.
Oh, yeah.
Good golly.
That's right,
you should have just led with that, and I would have immediately watched this movie.
Oh, that Lee Pace was in this movie?
Oh, yeah. I love Lee Pace. He is a fantastic actor. I loved him as Ronan the Destroyer in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. He's such a badass in that film. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Lee Pace. He's very cool.
He is. And he had a really cool show back in the day called Pushing Daisies. Yes. That was awesome. And it never came back. There was the whole campaign. People, the fans did the campaign to bring it back and never did. I've been in the house of his aunts because it's on the Warner Brothers animation lot over in North Hollywood. I've been in that house several times. Obviously, it's gutted. It doesn't look anything like it does, on the inside while it's being shot, because that's all done on a soundstage. But that show was great, and he's also in one of my favorite movies by Tarsem, The Fall, which I believe you're a fan of as well. Oh, you haven't seen The Fall?
No, but you recommended it to me after we discussed The Cell, because he had done The Cell as well.
Yes. Yeah, The Fall is definitely one to watch. So beyond all of that going down with Beth in this movie, if I give anything else away, it will be a spoiler, and we don't do that here at Movies You Miss Podcast. So what I will do is give you guys a little bit of trivia. This movie is directed by Mark Steven Johnson. Most recently, he did the story for Christopher Robin with Ewan McGregor, which I actually never did see. He also directed a film called Killing Season. He's the director of Daredevil, I believe with Colin Farrell, the 2003 Daredevil.
Oh, yes. Well, Colin Farrell is the villain, but it's Ben Affleck and Jennifer Gardner who are the leads.
Oh,
funny enough.
That's right. And Michael Clark Duncan is Kingpin.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. So then he directed When in Rome after Ghost Rider. He did Killing Season. He was also the writer on two Jack Lemmon movies from the 90s with Walter Matthau, Grumpy and Grumpier Old Men, starring Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. Yes, and if those that remember our episode before the 2022 wrap-up, we discussed Jack Lemmon at length. Now, the writers of this film have been a writing duo for several years. They have done a lot of short-form projects. They blew up on the scene with the Nicolas Cage film The Family Man with Téa Leoni. They also were the writing team on the David Duchovny, Orlando Jones, Julianne Moore, and Sean William Scott, and Dan Aykroyd, Ivan Reitman-directed film Evolution.
Yes!
We've discussed that one before. We are both fans of Evolution. Awesome. They're also the writers on the Robin Williams, John Travolta Disney film Old Dogs, which I never did see, and they have not done anything else after writing the masterpiece that is the film we are discussing right now, When in Rome. So maybe they'll come up with something else in the future, but I gotta say, the three of theirs that I have seen, I enjoyed, so that's good on them as writers, I would say. So beyond the writers and directors and the supporting cast of this film, the lead of this film, Beth, is played by Kristen Bell. Kristen Bell, what can I say? I have had the pleasure of working with Kristen Bell. I spent a day with her on a pilot several years ago that never made it to air. Unfortunately, it was a very clever pilot. Everybody involved really believed in it. And it was actually written and directed by Clark Duke. And if anybody knows who Clark Duke is, he is in several movies. He's in Sex Drive and in the Hot Tub Time Machine movies. He's the younger of the four in the Hot Tub Time Machine movies.
Oh, yeah.
Very nice guy. Yeah, I worked with him on a Funny or Die project, and then 2 years later, he was the director on this pilot. And he walked on set, and he was like, "Hey, Funny or Die." I'm like, "Hey, Funny or Die." So we we had that going for each other. And then looking over the call sheet that day, because I was the second AD, I didn't know who our special guest was going to be. And as the time is getting closer, I'm like, all right, our special guest is supposed to show up. Does anybody want to give me this person's phone number so I can make sure they show up to set on time? Does anybody want to give me anything? Finally, Clark gave me the cell phone number. I called the cell phone, answered it. I still didn't know who it was. It's like, "Hey, this is John. I'm the second AD. I just want to make sure that you're heading to set. We're in the neighborhood right now. It might be a little difficult to find us, but if you have any trouble, just give me a call and I can come out and find you." She's like, "Oh, thank you so much." Sweetest thing on the phone. Again, I'm just like, okay, who's this going to be? It's probably going to be some who the hell knows who. And that's one of my favorite things about the industry. A lot of TV shows that I've done, like when I did Curb Your Enthusiasm, I was asked to go bring some of the actors to set, and on the call sheet, they just had their initials. And my first day of Curb Your Enthusiasm, over the walkie, like, "Hey, John, can you go get Brian out of his trailer?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll go get Brian." I'm like, "Brian who? Brian fucking who?" So right. I go and knock on the door. It's Brian fucking Cranston. And I'm just like, "Hey, Walter fucking White, we are ready for you on set, sir." And he comes down and we talked the entire way. He's like, "Where are you from? What's your name? Are you married?" This, that, and the other. I was just like, "Dude, you're probably never going to talk to me again, and you want to know my life? Fuck yeah." Like, the guy was really awesome.
Awesome.
So anyway, going back to the pilot story, a little tangent, but get a phone call that unfortunately she's not sure what house we're shooting in. So I step outside, and she's in the driveway. So great, she found the place. I walk around to the car. She rolls the window down. It's Kristen fucking Bell. And I froze for a second. I was like, "Oh."
You froze?
Oh, hey.
You were frozen?
I froze. For the first time in forever, I froze, if you will.
Perfect.
So she's just like, "I'm Kristen." And I'm like, "Yeah, no shit." But of course, I was just like, "Yeah, hi, I'm John. Welcome to the show. We'll get you into hair and makeup." And she was just the sweetest fucking thing on the planet. We got her into hair and makeup. She was in and out in like a half an hour. And while we were setting up a bunch of different shots in this bar down the road, I ended up spending a solid like 2.5 hours literally gushing about how much I loved her in Hit and Run, how much I loved her in Forgetting Sarah Marshall, how much of a Disney fucking nut I am, and how I didn't know that she was the voice of Anna in Frozen when I first saw Frozen, and I thought that she had one of the most beautiful voices I'd ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
When I signed her out, she sang a couple of Frozen song lyrics to me, which was fucking amazing. On her way out, she was like, "Hey, John, can I do something for you?" And I'm like, "What do you want?" She goes, "For the first." I was like, "Oh, shit. Oh, shit." And she just sang as I walked her to her car. It was so awesome. She was the sweetest fucking thing on the planet.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so if those of you that don't know who she is, I just mentioned Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Frozen. She's in Pulse, which was, I think, the first movie I ever saw her in, which is a remake of a Japanese horror movie. And she's in the cult classic show that my wife, I think, has watched in the time that my wife and I have been together. She's watched it from beginning to end 5 or 6 times, Veronica Mars.
Yes.
I've never seen an episode. I hear it's great, but it's not one that I've ever watched. But I do like Kristen Bell, not only because I've worked with her, but as an actress, I think she's always very fun to watch and always very entertaining, and she seems to really enjoy what she does. And that's one thing that you couldn't ask for more in an actress, especially for having been with that actress for a day, just like talking about the voice acting experience and even talking about Hit and Run, which I know a lot of people didn't see, but that was the first thing I said. I was like, "Look, I don't know if you hear it often, but I really enjoyed Hit and Run. I thought that movie was awesome." And she told me about a half an hour of like all these behind the scenes things with her and Tom Arnold and how her and Dax Shepard like came up with the idea. And I'm just like, fuck yeah, it's fucking awesome. Very, very sweet woman, great actress, a lot of fun to work with, and a lot of fun to watch. I just think she exudes so much authenticity in majority of the characters that she plays. And in this movie, there's so much authenticity, I feel like, dripping from her and Josh Duhamel that really make the movie just a sweet, sweet tooth movie. You kind of get a toothache at the end of this one because it's like, my God, that was sweet.
And what great chemistry they had together instantaneously.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as they met each other, I was like, damn, I'm seeing sparks. Okay, this is believable.
Yeah, definitely. I know, and one of my favorite parts in the entire movie is early on, Beth says to her assistants, like, 2 weeks, it's not even long enough for a credit check. And then, of course, Nick says the same thing at the wedding, and she just, like, lights up that a man would say something like that. And you can see, like, immediately she's like, okay, maybe there's hope for men out there after all,
Yes.
And I really thought that was awesome.
Her is such a classic sister move. Her sister is getting married after knowing a guy for 2 weeks. And when she's bonding with Josh Duhamel's character at the wedding about it, because he's the best man and she's the maid of honor.
Yeah.
And finally the dams kind of open and they both admit, they're like, oh my God, this is just a disaster. This is not going to work out. And she goes, this marriage has the shelf life of a banana.
Yeah.
So hard.
That's a good one.
This movie is so funny.
It really is, and I'm glad that you found it funny. And when my wife asked me what my guilty pleasure movie was, I said, oh, it's When in Rome. And she literally rolled her eyes and goes, you just watched it. And I said, so what? So what? I just watched it. And I'm going to tell you one other thing.
Of a guilty pleasure.
Oh, absolutely. And this is how guilty pleasure it is. I watched it the other night for this. I needed another pick-me-up. I watched it again in the last 24 hours.
Aww.
It's one of those movies. Like I said, the end is great. The end credit music is great.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a fun movie. It's like I said, it's just sweet. And beyond Kristen Bell's authenticity, and literally everybody else in this movie does feel authentic, kind of like the she's out of my league thing.
Mm-hmm.
You buy that these people are these people. You know,
like all his friends.
Really who they are. Yeah. And I just love how Josh Duhamel is like the hot guy, but he's stumbling around. He runs into a fucking tree at one point. He falls down in Manhattan at one point or another. I just love his whole charming aspect when, she sprays him with the Banaka. And he goes, oh, it really hurt. And she goes, I'm so sorry. Let me look. He goes, I'm kidding. It didn't hurt that bad. And she goes, you think you're really charming. He goes, a little. She goes, well, you are. And like walks away. I just thought that was really funny. It's just a great, fun little flick. And like I said, I really don't have a lot of trivia. I haven't mentioned any trivia yet. But what I will mention is that the story behind the Fontana dell'Amore is actually true, and it is blasphemous to even think about removing any of the coins from that fountain. Suffice to say that some of this movie, although it may not even look like it, was actually shot in Rome. There's some weird CGI moments in this movie that do not look even remotely believable, but they push the story along. And I've already kind of talked about the cast, and one of the main reasons I wanted to see this movie was because of Will Arnett, and didn't really get into too much of Will Arnett's career, but he has had quite the career. He is in one of the greatest sitcoms ever written on television, Arrested Development. He plays Joe Bluth. Also, he is the voice of Lego Batman, which Lego Batman is a fantastic Batman movie.
Yes.
Oddly enough, we did not talk about it during our Batman episode. I'm a little surprised by that, to be honest, because I do like Lego Batman, but I think it kind of falls along one of those movies that's good, but it's a forgettable good, and you kind of maybe forgot that you've seen it. I kind of forget that I've actually seen both the Lego movies. They're both good movies, and every time I think about them, I do remember sequences and stuff. But they're forgettable, I guess, and don't take that as an insult if ever you are the director of any of these movies and listening. It's not anything that we're saying it's a forgettable movie because it's bad. It's not. They were good movies. It's just there's so many movies and things out there that it's sometimes you're like, oh yeah. But anyway, Will Arnett, he's doing Lego Masters now. He's hosting that, which is a entertaining
niece's favorite show.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that is When in Rome, released in 2010, starring Kristen Bell and everybody else we mentioned. Film came out on January 29th of 2010. Like I said, I originally did see it in theaters. Budget was $28 million. Pretty decent budget. So on a $28 million budget, the opening weekend box office was $12.3 million. Domestically, in the United States, the film brought in $32 million, and worldwide box office was $43 million for When in Rome.
Terrible.
No, not terrible at all. So that's pretty good. It got people into the seats.
Mm-hmm.
And we have done the year 2010 because we know the highest grossing film of 2010 is currently the highest grossing film of all time. Avatar, the original, was the highest grossing film of 2010.
Yes, it was.
We weren't going to play that game today because we have already played it for this year, and I don't need to really list off the top movies of that year. Suffice to say, I will list off a few because they're two of my favorite films. Number 94, coming in with $32.6 million for the year of 2010. When in Rome, my pick for episode 42.
Broke the top
here
100.
At Movies You Missed. Broke the top hundo. And then number 95, bringing in $32 million, just $600,000 less than When in Rome. She's Out of My League, which was my first rom-com episode. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is my guilty pleasure episode. I do have a lot of guilty pleasure rom-coms. I think this one takes the cake for me, though. It is a sweet, Very entertaining, very laugh-out-loud, hilarious romantic comedy led by a cast of characters that are excellent to watch, and I always want more. As I said before, my wife says we watched this 6 months ago, and maybe we did. I don't know. I feel like it's been a year, but I've watched it many times, and I very much enjoy it. And Vee, I'm glad that you enjoyed it too.
I did. I will wholeheartedly agree with you. Laugh out loud funny. There were a couple scenes where I was doubled over because I was laughing so hard. Awesome. It is a little bit cheesier than Marry Me, so I think if you're looking for a rom-com that is a little bit more serious and maybe a little bit more mature. I mean, Owen Wilson's character is a single dad. Marry Me is
right.
Something to put on this week. If you're looking for more of a laugh out loud rom-com, then definitely put Ren and Rome on. It's very funny.
I would have to agree with you about the tone of both of these movies. There's definitely, and not that there's some kind of immaturity with When in Rome, but it does, I keep saying it's sweet. I mean, it's easy, it's not like there's any real heartbreaking moments going on in this movie.
Yes, it's a very fun rom-com. I've certainly seen worse rom-coms, and in fact, I've even seen worse rom-coms with Josh Duhamel in them.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, because he's been in a bunch
Which one?
of them. He's been in some Nicholas Sparks movies. He's been in Win a Date with Tad Hamilton, with Topher Grace and Kate Bosworth. So yes, I love that this is your guilty pleasure pick. I think it's wonderful. I can understand why it's a guilty pleasure pick, but I don't think it's an atrocious movie.
Right. Yes. Glad to hear it. Very glad.
Thankfully, neither of us walked out of our guilty pleasure picks this week.
No, we did not. That's good news indeed. And again, if you do want to watch Run in Rome, you can rent it on iTunes or any of the streaming apps for $3.99. Vee, I believe you had an issue with When in Rome, kind of like with the front page, if I remember correctly.
I may have downloaded the Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen 2002 When in Rome on accident.
That would have been a guilty pleasure I never would tell anybody about, but no. I've never seen that one, so I have no idea if that's a good movie or not.
It's I can tell you from the 45 seconds of it that I watched, it's terrible.
That wraps up episode 42 of Movies You Missed podcast, our guilty pleasure rom-com episode. Thank you guys for joining us. Please rate, review, subscribe on any of the podcast platforms that you listen to us on. We're always looking for feedback, and if you do leave us a review, there might be a sticker in it for you in the future. So do come on down and give us a review or two. Next week, we are going to be going into black cinema. I'm very excited. This is going to be a fun episode. This film came out several years ago. It is a Spike Lee joint starring John David Washington and Adam Driver. This is 2018's Black Klansman. Fantastic film about a true story of a police officer that infiltrates the KKK during the insanity that ensues during the rise of the Ku Klux Klan in America. Definitely worth checking out. Black Klansman is currently available on Hulu with a subscription, or you can rent it on Amazon Prime for $3.99. And it is a fantastic story, fantastic film. Definitely worth checking out if you want to follow along with me. Vee, what's your choice for next week?
I love that we are celebrating movies from a variety of voices. I'm hoping that we can introduce our audience to new films that maybe they wouldn't normally watch. And it's a bit of a win-win here because not only am I introducing John to a black cinema film, I'm also introducing him to another Western.
Oh.
This is The Harder They Fall, a movie that was produced by Netflix in 2021 and just has some incredible actors in it. Delroy Lindo, Idris Elba, the incomparable Regina King, who I am in love with.
Oh, yes.
And also up-and-coming hot ticket Jonathan Majors, who's about to be in some massive films. And because it is a Netflix-produced film, you can find it if you have a subscription to Netflix.
Oh, whoa. I was confused. I wasn't sure where I'd be able to watch this one. Cool. I'm looking forward to it. I must have forgotten that you mentioned that it was a Western, so excited for that.
Yes, I'm looking forward to hearing what you think.
And once again, that does wrap us up here at episode 42 of Movies You Missed podcast. Thank you guys very much for joining us. Hopefully you have learned about 2 new romantic comedies that you have not heard of or have been curious about, and we'll give them a shot. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Hit us up in an email with a suggestion of maybe a guilty pleasure romantic comedy of yours at moviesyoummisspod@gmail.com. So again, thank you guys very much, and as always, we love to close out here at Movies You Miss Podcast with film is a form of art, and in art all opinions are valid, except if you think
bad movies can't be good.
Hey. Some of the worst movies are fantastic. Armageddon, case in point.
I guess I know
that could have been a guilty pleasure rom-com.
You're going to pick for our guilty pleasure action movie.
Oh, no, I've got worse than Armageddon, believe me.
Perfect. Well, until that episode, thanks, everyone, and bye-bye.
Cheers, everyone.